What's going on, Hosey?
What is going on, Mr. Aaron Novello?
Just doing it, brother, doing it. So I was thinking to myself, what would be kind of valuable? It's what I'm always thinking. What's valuable or helpful or useful to the agent community who may be, watching us from time to time
Mhm.
in hopes that we share something with them that would be helpful or useful in some way. And I know we did dang, you drinking coffee, bro? You normally don't drink coffee. What are you doing?
It's my birthday, bro. I get to
Is
do what I
it?
want today.
Is
Yeah.
it your birthday?
Yeah. Somebody brought me coffee. Yeah.
Get out
So
of here, bro. I didn't know that. Dang, bro. Happy birthday, Jose. How old are you? 37, 38?
37. Yeah.
Dang, bro. Good for you. I've been telling people you're 37 already. I don't know why.
That's what you were telling me before I started making $1 million. You were like, oh, you're going to make $1 million. No problem. So I think you just, you could see things before they happen.
Is that what it is? That's good. Well, happy birthday, bro. So,
Thanks.
um, we did we do this kind of role play group
Hmm.
on Wednesdays where we do live role play with
Hmm.
agents. And what we went over this week was how to give a formal presentation and list buyers.
Hmm.
I know that the majority of our business has been listing property in high volume. I know all the leverage on the listing side. At the same time, I'm also aware that most agents are very buyer heavy.
Hmm.
60 to 80% of their deals are buy side deals. And now with these rule changes, it's going to be a requirement at some point. They're having to work through the changes because there's kind of unintended consequences. So they may not go into effect until maybe December. At the same time, we could just operate under the assumption that it's definitely going to change. You're going to need to get buyer brokerage agreements signed. You're going to
Hmm.
need to have a conversation about compensation upfront, and you're going
Yeah.
to need to give a formal presentation with regards to a prospective buyer choosing you as their agent to represent them and help them to purchase a home. And for me and you as listing agents, we've been doing that forever.
Yeah.
Go in, you give a formal presentation, you discuss the services that you're going to be providing, the reasons why you feel like you can be of service and to help them, and then we discuss the compensation and what it is up front, and we authorize an agreement. So this is really no different than that. It's just that now buyers agents are going to have to do that, and because they've never had to do it because it hasn't been mandatory, I believe that it's a skill set that many don't have.
Yeah. What I was going
But
to say, even when I was a buyer's agent, I was having buyer's consultations with buyers before going out to show them properties as well too. But you're right. I think it's something that most buyer's agents are not doing, are not accustomed to it. So like anything is just an adaptation. Like so who was it that said the quote, it's not the fittest, it's not the smartest, it's not the strongest that survive, it's the ones that are most willing to adapt and able to adapt. And that's the same thing in real estate. Like I'll give you guys an example. If you think about this, think about like there was agents that were really successful in an REO market, and then it turned into a traditional market. There's certain agents that did really well in the REO market and really well in the traditional market. Certain agents did well in the REO market, but not in the traditional. Why? They failed to adapt. So, like anything in the industry, I think that the people that produce outcomes, like generous outcomes over a long period of time, it's the ones that can see what's going on in the marketplace, say, okay, like I need to adapt to this. How do I adapt? What skill set do I need to learn? They learn the skill set and everything's normal. And in some cases, they even do better because they're able to adapt. So the reason we're having these episodes is just to help you guys recognize that it's a skill set that you guys can learn, and it's a skill set that if you guys learn, you guys can adapt and obviously get better outcomes as well.
yeah,
So
agreed, 100%. I mean, that's no different than how I did 100 deals one year, 75 were expireds, but then, and that was because that's expireds were at an all-time historic high.
yeah,
And then the marketplace got better. And what happens to expireds is that they shrink.
disappear.
And when that happened, I banged my head against the wall for 90 days. And then I realized I needed to get a different source because it was not acceptable to me to do less and not continue to grow and expand. That source became probate. And then I went from 100 deals to 500 deals. And then, these online lead sources came around. Cool. We started to do that. And that was an awesome source of business, like made over, I don't know, $250,000 just
Yeah.
doing those sources. I know now you're using PPL. So it's just, like you're saying, adapting to the market. So if you are going to work with buyers, which I know many agents will, this is a skill set that you're going to have to learn. You're going to have to learn how to give a formal presentation on the products and services that you're going to be providing. Then you're going to have to learn, how to present the different ways that you can get compensated, because there'll be different ways that you can get to it. Explain that if there's a gap between the compensation that you're looking for and what is being offered out or what can be negotiated, that it would be the responsibility of the buyer to pay that, and explain to them what happens on the outside chance if a listing agent's not going to provide any compensation at all, right? The different options that they have at their disposal, and handle any objections that they may have, right? Because they may have some objections and they may come back at you, be like, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if that happens?
I also think that it's important for people working with buyers that they have a process. So on the listing side, we would have a process, and it's a very similar process on the buyer side. So like on the listing side, step one is you set an appointment. Nothing's going to happen unless you set an appointment to meet with somebody. Step two, you pre-qualify that appointment, meaning you collect some information before you go on the appointment. Step three, you send a pre-listing package, or you send a pre-buy package. So you need to create a package that you can send out to buyers, let them know what it's going to look like working with you and frequently asked questions, etc. Step four, you call to confirm the appointment. And step five, you give a great presentation. So I think if people understand that there's a process. So if somebody says, hey, Jose, look, I just got qualified to buy a property. It's like, okay, what is the first step? Step one is set the appointment. Great. So the first step in the home buying process is for us to sit down for what's called the buyer's consultation. In a buyer's consultation, I'm going to get very clear on what you're looking for. I'm going to share with you what is going on in the marketplace. And then I'm going to be going over the services that we can help you with to help you find the right property at the best price. What's a good day for us to get together for the buyer's consultation? Oh, well, I just want to go and then at that point, you might start getting some objections like, oh, I just want to go take a look at homes, blah, blah, blah. Or another agent said that they can just show me properties without having a buyer's consultation. I understand that another agent said that they can show you properties, and I understand that you want to go take a look at homes. Here are the benefits of the buyer's consultation. If we follow this process correctly, what this process is going to allow me to do, it's really going to help me understand your needs, and it's going to make it so that I'm showing you only properties that you are interested, instead of wasting your time showing you properties that have nothing to do. So if we sit down for the buyer's consultation, I am going to understand your needs so well, and you're going to have a very good understanding of what the marketplace is doing, that it's going to make the home buying process a lot smoother and a lot easier. So if we were to get together for this buyer's consultation process, is there a certain date of the week that would normally work out best for you? Oh, well, Friday at 3:00. Boom. Step one is done, right? Mm-hmm. Step two, then you pre-qualify. Great. Now that we have the meeting for Friday at 3:00, I have a couple of questions that I need to ask you. I'm going to be doing a little bit of homework, and I just want to make sure that I'm fully prepared for our meeting. Is it okay if I ask them now?
Yep.
Right? You start going through a series of questions to pre-qualify that appointment, to make sure that when you do meet with them, you know what's important to them, what's not important to them. Because if we just talk about the buyer's consultation process and you don't pre-qualify the appointment, you have no idea what you're walking into. You have no idea if this guy's a bona fide, qualified, even buyer, because you haven't done the homework up front. So it's important, the same process for the listing, it's important that we flip it and make it into a buyer's process. So what kind of questions would you want to know for the prequel? You'd want to know, hey, what does your ideal property look like? What does your dream property look like? Briefly. What if they tell you their dream property and all of a sudden you realize that that property's on the market right now, and that property only comes on the market once every 2 months? You may want to be like, hey, let's go look at that property right away. Hey, we need to move up the buyer's consultation to today because that property will likely be in escrow by Friday. What else do you want to know? You want to know if they're qualified, right? You want to know which lender they're qualified with. You want to know how much they qualify for. You want to know what type of loan they qualify for. So there's a couple questions with which we can get more into detail. And I don't know if you want to go over that process, Aaron, or what your idea, but I
Well,
just wanted to make sure that if you are going to work with buyers, that you guys understand that there's a process. And if you follow that process, it's going to make the home buying process a lot more efficient, and it's going to make it a lot more enjoyable for all parties.
yeah, and I think really this is the same thing as listing property.
100%.
So I was just on a call, a coaching call yesterday with a one-on-one client, and he's doing great. And I was like, dude, are you pre-qualifying every listing appointment before you go on it?
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of hesitation, which means you're not. And it's like, are you asking all of the questions? And there's a little bit of hesitation, which means there's not. And so what happens then is he's walking into situations where he doesn't even know the who, what, where, when, or why. He doesn't know to a very clear degree what the level of motivation is. He doesn't know if it's an option to not sell and still move. He doesn't know any of this stuff.
Yeah.
And once I started to explain to him a process, which is like, hey, you book the appointment, then you send a BombBomb video, then you do a pre-listing package, and here's what you include, and you include the comps. He's like, wow, you send them the comps before you go? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Because I want to basically, he's like, oh, I get it. You're giving them everything they need to make a decision before they see you. I'm like, yeah, because what you do is you go over there, don't give them everything you need. You don't know what the situation is. And then they'll say, like, hey, I want to think about it.
100%.
Or, hey,
you're going to get it every time.
You're going to get it every time. So he's like, oh, I understand what you're doing now. And I'm like, yeah. And then once we do that, then we're going to meet in person. And there's a specific process that we follow, right? That helps us to get to the end destination. So it's the same thing here. It's just framing it in that way and saying to yourself, like, oh, like I need to list buyers.
Yeah.
I need to pre-qualify them up front. I need to have a formal presentation to them about the products and services that I'm going to be providing them with, walk them through a process of how this is going to work, and then talk about compensation and how we get compensated. And for agents who do not do this, who try to still do that, like, speed to lead type thing. I heard Zillow is trying to encourage everybody to do these like 7-day, no commitment, no compensation buyer brokers agreements. And the way that they're trying to sell that to consumers is like, well, whoa, like you don't want to get married to an agent just yet. So here's a 7-day agreement with no compensation and no nothing. And I'm like, well, you know how many agents are going to do that, run around and not get paid? Like a lot, right? So you just have to make this mental shift and saying like, okay, I have to list buyers. Now, are all of them going to want to hire you on the spot? Because an objection that's going to come up is like, well, Jose, we just met. So like, I don't know if I want to engage with you and sign an agreement for like 120 days.
Yeah.
And it's just like saying like, well, I don't know if I want to sign a listing agreement for 6 months. And then you just start to ask questions. Well, I'm respectful of that. I guess I'm curious. Like, tell me a little bit about what the concern is, and then be quiet. And based on what they say, then you can begin to handle that, in some way, shape, or form. And there will be different forms of compensation for different forms of representation. I think that's also true as well. Right. So let's talk. Go ahead.
Well, I came up, I did a presentation maybe like 2 weeks ago on the 5-step process. And these are the things that you want to know on the prequel. Number one, you want to know what their ideal property looks like. And the reason you want to know that is it would be helpful for you to have that so that when you walk into the meeting, you have a little bit of an idea of what they're looking for. You want to know what their motivation is. Why are they looking to purchase a property now versus just waiting another year? Is it an option for them not to purchase a property? You want to know their timing. Like, what's an ideal time frame for them to be in a home? Like, is it in a month? Is it 2 weeks? Is it something urgent? Is it something that they want to be in a year from now? What is their budget? What do they want the price point to be in that they want to buy? How much are they qualified for? The budget and the qualification can be two different things, right? Are they considering any other agents? You want to know if this is like they're considering you and 2 or 3 other agents. That way you know what you're walking into, and you want to know who the decision makers are going to be. Who are the decision makers that are going to make the decision as to how this home buying process is going to go? Who's going to be involved? Are the parents going to be involved? Is it just the husband and the wife? Is the brother going to move in with them? Who's going to be involved? And if you cover those topics and ask questions around that, it's going to make it so that you're better prepared for the consultation.
Agreed, 100%. So let's talk about some of the kind of value propositions, because I can hear agents out there being like, okay, well, what's my value proposition? How do I construct a value proposition in terms of like what I'm going to be doing or the services that I'm going to be providing to a buyer. And I think it's really important because I've been geeking out about like the story brand stuff and the foundation of story branding. And I think this will help everybody to create, you know, this value proposition, right? So the foundation of story branding is that in all stories, we all speak the language of stories, and there's a main character in the story. So the question is who's the main character in this story? Well, it's the client. They're the main character. The main character has a problem, right? What's up, brother Holden? I see you, bro. The main character has a problem. And what's their problem? They don't know if they could get financing. What's up, Timmons? They don't know if they can purchase the home. They don't know if they have enough down payment. You know what I mean? Like they don't know if they can win, if they're getting multiple offer situations, right? And there's 3 levels of problems: external, internal, and philosophical. So what would be an example of that with a buyer? External problem could be interest rates are high. It's an external problem. External problem could be, you know, the home I want gets multiple offers and I'm getting outbid. It's an external problem. Internal problem is I'm kind of afraid to do this because like I may be taking on financial commitment, that, right? You know what the philosophical problem is, Jose? Should I keep renting or should I buy? It's a philosophical problem. But I don't know this unless I sit down and have a consultation and ask a lot of questions, right? Then what happens in story branding is that a guide shows up. The guide in this example would be you as the agent. That would be Jose. And Jose gives a plan. That's the 4th step in the process. So his plan is here's the process that we're going to use. I'm going to ask you a series of questions to find out specifically what you're looking to accomplish and why. What are some challenges? Maybe internally, what's going on with you as far as this purchase is concerned? What's some trepidation? What's the time frame, right? Again, he's finding out about the main character.
Yeah.
And he, as the guide, can then tell them a plan. The plan is the process, right? The process is here's what we're going to do. We're going to get on the phone with a lender. We're going to have a conversation so we can see exactly what we qualify for. So that way we don't make offers on properties that put you in a situation where you feel uncomfortable financially. The second thing we're going to do is I'm going to go on this screen here and we're going to, you know, look at some properties that fit the criteria. The third thing we're going to do is prior to going out and taking a look, we're going to go over all the products and services that I'm going to be providing you with as an agent. Then we're going to have a conversation about compensation. Okay. And the different ways that we can get to that compensation. And then, you know, if it all makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident, we'll take care of what's called a buyer brokers agreement, which you can authorize. And then, you know, together as a team, we're going to help you to find your next home. How does that sound? And they're like, great, but it's in the framework of story brand. There's a main character. They have a problem. There's 3 levels of problems: external, internal, philosophical. The guide shows up, which is you as the agent. You give them a plan, and then you have to call them to action. Because characters don't do anything unless they're acted upon on an outside force. By an outside force. That's just true. Like if you think of characters in movies, whether it be like, you know, like Harry Potter, and he's the hero. Dumbledore is the guide, but Dumbledore has to call him to action in order for him to do something. Same with like Han Solo and like, or Luke Skywalker and like Obi-Wan Kenobi. You know what I mean? They have to be called to action because the hero usually is reluctant to take the action. So then there's a call to action, and then you ultimately end up getting them what they want, which is the home. And that's really what you're describing, isn't it, Jose?
Yeah. It basically is just in different terms.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you this, like you talked about value proposition. What kind of value can agents offer to their clients? I personally believe, and this is our thing at the Morales Group, our main 2 value propositions are: we have a really high offer to acceptance ratio, meaning when we submit an offer, there's a very high chance, even in competitive situations, that we will get your offer accepted. And the reason for that is we have a process. And then 2, we have access to off-market deals. Now, some people may be like, well, I don't have a team. I don't have access to off-market deals. I think that the offer to acceptance ratio is something that if you learn that process, you can get more of your clients' offers accepted. And then that could be a main value proposition. So when I was working with buyers, people would come to me because they know that if they submitted an offer through me, there is a very high probability that they were going to get their offer accepted, even in a competitive offer situation. My brother-in-law, Jaime, who's an agent that works with me, maybe the last 10 offers, every single one of them has gone accepted, even when competing against 6 to 7 offers. Why? He follows a process to submitting offers. So it's the same thing as almost like a list to sales price ratio. Very similar. It's just an offer to acceptance ratio based on how many offers you're submitting to how many of them are getting accepted. So I'll give you an example. If you're like at 3 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 or 1 out of 10, there needs to be some work there. And that is a skill that needs to be learned. If you're 7 out of 10, very, very good, you know? But if you're anywhere less than 7 or 8 out of 10, there's some work that needs to be done as it relates to the process. What are your thoughts on having a process, Aaron, for when you're submitting offers? And do you think that's an important value proposition? Like meaning like
100%, particularly in the environment that we're in, because, you know, I'm getting ready to come out to Cali and spend some time with my boysies and drop some knowledge on some folks out there. And, you know, in preparation for that, we were talking about stats and stuff. And, you know, your market in your geographic area in California, inventory's down 41%, bro, year over year. That's bananas.
It's insane, bro.
Crazy, bro. So like the probability that if they like it, somebody else is going to like it is very, very high. Very high. So that is a value proposition for the current environment where, hey, it's no different than a list to sales price ratio. It's the same thing. Right. And again, I want everybody to start thinking this way. Like, you're listing buyers. And just as a listing agent, I have a value proposition. One of those might be list to sales price ratio. Getting your offers accepted is the same thing, just for buyers. And in this environment, it's very high.
And it's performance based, meaning that like if you learn this process, so let's get into it. Like, okay, what would increase the chances of having a good offer to acceptance ratio? I'll ask the audience a question. Is real estate a relationship type business? Meaning that other agents sometimes will do business with other agents that they trust, agents that they network with, agents that they have relationships with. Is that 100%. True or false?
Yeah, it's true.
True. I learned that like I'll tell you guys a story just about relationships and why your reputation in the marketplace is important and why you don't want to be a little dick, you know, like. And that's true. Like sometimes people like don't realize this, but that the way that they act in a transaction, if you fail to stop answering the phone, if you fail to communicate, if you fail to basically be professional, respond back,
do something shady in a transaction, like
thinking like you're thinking about very short term. You're not thinking about how is this going to affect my reputation next time I'm working with this agent as well too. Good news or bad news, it's okay. Communicate those. You know, if you go missing for a week and then act like nothing happened when you went missing, that's going to affect your reputation right there. So
yeah, or let's say as if you submit an offer and the listing agent doesn't get back to you for like 5 days and then it's like, oh, by the way, we sold it. Like, come on, man. Like that's going to affect people's other agents' desire to want to do transactions with you.
Well, I'll tell you this, even like in the multiple part of our process, whenever we had 8 offers on a listing, whenever a buyer's agent's offer doesn't get accepted because 7 of them are not, we basically write everybody an email and tell them why their offer didn't get accepted. Like, for example, we just have one and it's like, look, the seller actually chose a cash offer that was the second highest offer, very close to the highest offer. Like the certainty of no appraisal, no loan contingency. They decided to go with that. If I didn't care about my reputation, I would just say, sorry, your offer didn't get accepted.
Yeah. But I would go one step further, Jose, when I would, in those situations, I'd be like, listen, you know,
we didn't represent the buyer. Yeah.
Yes. So all offers were presented. They ended up going with another offer based on terms and conditions, just so you know that other offer was not from me. It was from another agent in the community. Yep. Because we both know as like, you know, dominant listing agents, like that's the first thing people think of, you know, like, like we did something like that was, you know, kind of not above board sort of thing. But so,
and the only reason you would do that is because you care about your reputation. And if you care about your reputation, it'll lead to future deals in the future.
Right. So, and all of that was Jose's ways of explaining like that part of the value proposition. So look, you know, our offer made to offer accepted ratio is like 90+%.
Yeah.
And can I share with you why that would be beneficial for you? Well, yeah. Well, I don't know if you're aware of this, but our inventory here in, Oxnard or whatever county is actually down 41% year over year. Did you know that? They're like, no, I didn't know that. Yeah. So we actually have 41% less properties on the market than we did the year before. So as such, let me ask you this. If we like a home, what do you think the chances are with such low inventory that somebody else is going to like it too? Well, it's probably pretty high. Yeah. In fact, we just had a home that we put on the market. Do you know how many offers we had on it? He's like, how many? 8. So if you were able to have a process that you can follow that would increase the chances that when you were in a multiple offer situation that you would actually get your offer accepted, would that be valuable to you? And then be quiet. And notice how I did that. I didn't pontificate, talk about a whole thing, go into this whole explanation. It was more like ask a couple questions and be like, hey, would this be valuable to you? And they're like, well, yeah, that'd be awesome. Awesome. And then you move on to your next value proposition.
Well, the other thing I would add to that is what I did on the listing side is I started collecting wins in a Dropbox folder. So like, let's say that you receive an email on the from a listing agent, block out the listing agent's name. Congratulations, your offer was accepted. There was 10 offers on this property. I would collect that email, add it to my presentation. Be like, look, this offer was accepted. There was 10 other offers on this property. If you have a multiple counter offer form where your offer got accepted, boom. I started collecting wins in my Dropbox folder where that would add to my presentation. So in some cases, instead of just saying to them like, hey, look, we have a really high offer to acceptance ratio. Look, here's an example. Look at how many offers there were. And here's the email that says that mine wasn't the highest offer, but they like the terms and conditions better than the other offer. Look how we got this offer accepted. Do you think if you show that to a buyer, be like, yours wasn't the highest offer, yet yours got accepted? Dude, they're going to be like, oh my God, like that's crazy. But here's
just to emphasize stuff, just so you guys know, what Jose says is, dude. Or the other one he likes a lot is bro.
Bro,
let's go.
But is this true? Like if you show 100%. That to a buyer, instead of telling them, if you show them, be like, hey, look, so what you need to start doing is preparing your presentation, going back in time and collecting all your wins and just being like, look, 10 offers here. Our offer got accepted because of this, and this. That way you can demonstrate to them that you have a really high offer to acceptance ratio. Now, here's how we teach the high offer to acceptance ratio. How do we teach that? Okay, this is our process for a high offer to acceptance ratio. A client asked me, Jose, I want to submit an offer on a property. What should I submit at? Most agents say, well, you should come in at the asking price. Or, well, property is listed at 800. It's a hot market. Comps are at 820. Submit at 820. Is that the right process? Wrong process. The correct answer is, let me check with the listing agent. Let me see what other offers are on the table, and let me come back to you with a recommendation. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Oh, like the listing agents aren't going to tell you what else. They're not going to give you any information. False. That is a skill that you can learn. That is a skill that you can ask. I call it pre-qualifying the listing agent. So basically, I'm going to reach out to the listing agent. I'm going to be like, hey, Aaron, Jose Morales here. If Aaron is not available and Aaron's a top producer and he has an assistant, I'm going to reach out to his assistant. And I'm going to ask her some questions. Like, hey, Aaron, Jose Morales here. I'm sure you're getting lots of calls. You're probably the most popular person in Oxnard, California right now with the listing. Just wanted to ask you, do you currently have any offers on the property? Yes, we have 3. Fantastic. Congratulations. I knew that would happen. You did a great job marketing the property. You mind me asking, are any of the offers above X price? Like if the listing price is $750, I might say, are any of the offers above $760? No, there's no offers above $760. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Any of the offers above $750? No, none of them are above $750. Now I'm basically finding out what else is on the table. If I'm able to find out what else is on the table, I'm able to make a recommendation to my client. What other type of information am I going to find out? I'm going to find out, Aaron, when are you guys presenting the offers? Aaron, is your client the type of client that will counter highest and best, or is your client the type of client that moves forward with an offer right now? And if something good came in, well, if something really good came in, they may just move forward with it. Okay, great. What do you think would be a price that your clients would consider if something really good came in? And then at that point, you're going to receive objections. You're going to be like, well, I'm not allowed to share that information with you. And then at that point, it depends on what your answer is. Well, Aaron, you technically are. You're just choosing not to tell me. And if you choose not to tell me, I'm okay with that. But just so you know, you technically are allowed to tell me if you wanted to tell me, you know? Like, and then I may ask the same question in a different way. I may say, well, Aaron, just out of curiosity, if I came in at 760, would I be the highest offer? It's the
Yeah.
same question,
Same
just
thing.
asked in a different way.
And it's like, just keep going. Like what comes up for me is I might say something like, yeah, you know, like I appreciate that. At the same time, I know our job isn't to, we're not buying this home. Our job is to put it together, not to keep it apart. So anything that you'd be kind enough to share with me to help you make your job easier would be helpful.
Yeah.
And then be quiet. And eventually they might be like, well, I think if, you know what I mean? Then whatever information they give you, then you can go back. So what Jose's doing is he's explaining to you procedurally what he does. Now, here's the question. How can you, because I know that if you confuse, you lose. So you explaining that to a client, it might take a while. So
Yeah,
how can
I
we
wouldn't.
yeah, you wouldn't. I know you wouldn't. So
No, I wouldn't.
the point is like, how can we condense that into something that doesn't take a lot of calories for somebody to understand? And can that make them understand that it's going to help them to survive or thrive? And I think what we just did does it, where you ask
just a really high offer to acceptance ratio.
Yeah,
this
and
is
then
a conversation with the listing agent, basically.
Yeah. And then when you show them, which I think is brilliant, right? It's the same thing I'm doing on a listing presentation. Like when you show, hey, here's an expired listing that was on the market for 6 months. It didn't sell. We came in, we staged it. We did this and this. Look how much we sold it for. And they're like, wow, really? You're like, yeah. I mean, is that the type of service and results you'd be expecting from the agent that you hire? And they're like, well, yeah. Well, the good news is you found them, or the good news is you found what you're looking for, right? It's the same thing. You're just doing it here. So acceptance ratio, and then where I was like, hey, did you know the inventory is down 41%? Didn't know that. Yeah. So we have 41% less homes than we did last year. So if we find a home that you like, or when we find a home that you like, what's the chances that somebody else may like it? And we have to compete with multiple offers. Well, I guess it's pretty high. Yeah. And as such, I don't know if you're aware of this, one of the value propositions that we provide as an agent is that our offer to offer acceptance ratio is 95%. Can I explain to you what that means? Well, yeah. What it means is 95% of the time when we submit an offer, it gets accepted. So what I'd like to go over with you is an example of that. Would that be okay? Well, yeah, that's fine.
Boom.
Well, here is an example for Mr. and Mrs. Smith. If you have a picture of them, even better. Their challenge is they wanted to be in Oxnard for under $700,000. And the average sales price right now is like $790,000. We found a home. There was 8 offers on the property. Being that there were 8 offers on the property, we submitted. Here's the email showing that our offer was not the highest. And here's the end result. And it's a picture of them in front of the home. And the way we do that is through networking. And, we have a proprietary process, like stuff like that. I'm imagining, though, is that the type of service and the type of outcomes that you'd be expecting from the agent to represent you to find your home? Yes, it is. Check. Now we move on to the next value proposition. So what would be an example of another value proposition?
I would say off-market deals. I would say that if you have any sort of access, like I'll give you an example, like at EXP, we have a spreadsheet where all of our agents go in there and post their off-market deals before they come on the open market, basically, or just stuff that they're working on, basically, before it comes on the marketplace. We collaborate in that way where we're able to help each other potentially find access to off-market stuff. Or in some cases, even with our EXP group, we'll text, hey, look, this guy is going to be listing a property. I couldn't take the listing, but in case anybody has a buyer, basically send it to him. I think that especially, I think that when people aren't finding the right properties, it's basically a couple different things. Number one is their agents not doesn't have a high offer to acceptance ratio, or number two, their agent doesn't have any access to off market deals. So I have agents, bro, that reach out to me because I'm a listing agent, and they'll reach out to me. They'll be like,
Hey,
hey,
did you
Jose,
hear?
like,
Hey, you hesitated, bro. You were about to be like, yeah, I list the most properties than anybody else in my geographic area. He said it all politely, didn't he? It's okay,
no,
bro. You can let it out.
no, you know it's crazy. I actually, for a presentation, looked it up, and I didn't know this. There's this program called Broker Metrics.
Yeah.
For the last 5 years, I've listed more properties than anybody else in Ventura County by about 33%, by like about 100. The number was close to 100 properties more than anybody else in Ventura County.
I love
So
it.
I was like, it was crazy. But I have agents that reach out to me like, hey, Jose, do you have anything coming up in this neighborhood? That's called access to off-market inventory. That's called being resourceful. If you know that somebody's a dominant listing agent and always has stuff coming up, you may want to reach out to them. Hey, Jose, do you have anything? And then at that point, like in our presentation, we have samples of emails from other agents. Hey, Jose, congratulations on getting your offer accepted on this off-market property. So like, think about it. You're going to the client and you're like, hey, look, we have a really high offer to acceptance ratio. Here's all those situations where we were able to outbid other offers. Hey, look, here's all the properties that we got accepted because we're always looking for off-market inventory. All the deals that got accepted without coming on the open market. Boom. 2 value propositions that are very, very simple, yet very, very valuable. Like,
Correct.
how important is it if somebody found their dream home? How important is it that you get their offer accepted?
Yeah, and here's how you can go into, because I love how you're explaining, and now it's like, all right, let's package it up that in a way that's clear and concise, easy to understand, and doesn't take a lot of calories to understand it.
Yep.
So it's like, remember how we just discussed that the inventory is down 41%?
Yeah.
So meaning we have 41% less homes on the market than we did the previous year. Well, we have the good fortune of actually listing a lot of properties on a regular basis, the most actually in Oxnard, 5 years in a row as an individual agent. So if you could have access to homes that were actually not on the market yet, so you didn't have to compete, would that be helpful or useful to you?
100. And then they'd be like, yeah, 100%. That would be helpful. And
Yeah.
now their eyes are like, tell me more. I'm
Yeah,
interested.
tell me more. Tell me more about
You know?
that. And you're like, and then you might be like, yeah, so because we have the good fortune of listing as many properties, what I'd like to do is just share with you examples of us putting deals together off market. Would that be okay? Yeah. You show them from the other agents. Yeah, other agents in the community, they know we list a lot of properties, so they're looking to see if we have any off market deals for their buyers. And then here's an example of 2 or 3 or 4, whatever off market deals we put together for buyers just like you, where they actually didn't have to compete with anybody.
Yeah.
And is that what you would expect? Is that the type of service that you would expect, or the type of access that you would expect with the agent that you hire to help you to find your next home? And they're going to be like, definitely.
Now, even imagine this. So that's 2 value propositions right there. That is not like, hey, look, I'm going to pay for your home warranty or do other sorts of, or I'm going to buy you dinner at the closing. 2 very important value propositions. What's a third value proposition? Negotiations. So, Mr. Aaron, I don't know if you realize this. Most people think that the only negotiation happens when you get your offer accepted. What if I told you that there was a second negotiation that nobody talks about?
What do you mean?
Well, when you open up escrow, you're going to do a home inspection and you're going to do different types of inspections on the property. What if I told you that I can actually potentially get you some sort of credit just depending on what comes up during those inspections? Or what if I told you that I was an expert in that process and my average negotiation that process is $10,000?
Yeah. So here's a cool way to do it. So it's like, in terms of that specifically, because remember, we have to constantly be couching things with our language and the stories that we're telling with surviving or thriving. If it's not surviving and thriving, you stop paying attention, right? And it's got to be easy to understand. My brain's trying to conserve calories, right? So if it's not easy for me to understand, well, I shut down as well. So, the other thing that we do for our buyers is, on average, we're able to negotiate a credit of blank amount
When we're already in escrow.
when we're already in escrow. Can I explain to you what I mean? Well, yeah. Well, and then you go into your explanation. Here's what happens. And once you're already in escrow, on average, we can negotiate this amount that you can use towards your closing cost. You could use that towards compensation. You could use it towards all different things. So I'm wondering, do you think that would be helpful or useful to you, an extra $5,000 to $10,000? And then, and they're gonna be like, well, of course it will. Right? Who's going to say no to that? So clear and concise, and in a way, and that has to do with them surviving or thriving.
Yeah.
Right.
And then even like, let's say that you're on the telephone and they're like, well, I don't think we should meet, Jose. Like, I've got this other agent that I'm talking to. Like, what makes you different? That's a really good question. You can either close, that's exactly why we need to get together so that we can go over what makes us different. Well, look, Aaron, there's actually 3 things that make me different. Number 1 is I have a 90% offer to acceptance ratio, meaning when you submit an offer through me, 9 out of 10 times it will get accepted. In our industry, the average offer to acceptance ratio is less than 50%, meaning that if you submit an offer with another agent, there's a potential that you could miss out on your dream home. Number 2, I have access to off-market properties, meaning that I will be presenting you off-market opportunities that you can potentially buy with no competition. Number 3, on average, when I'm in escrow, I'm negotiating about $10,000 for my clients after we go into escrow. Let me ask you this. If I can share with you a process to get your offers accepted, help you find off-market properties, and on average, help you negotiate better terms on your offer and potentially credits, would that be worth 15 minutes of your time?
There you go. That's how it's done. That's how it's done, son.
But do you see how we just went through this process of getting very clear on our value proposition? And now because you know what your value proposition are, it's very easy for you to be clear on that over the phone. Now, let me ask you this. If you're telling people that you have a 90% offer to acceptance ratio, do you think that puts a little bit of pressure on you to negotiate, like to get their offer accepted?
100%.
100%. That little bit of pressure is good, because that's what you need to make sure that their offer gets accepted. Number 2, if you're telling people that you're going to find them off-market deals, do you think you're going to be networking with other agents and be like, hey, what do you have in this neighborhood? Hey, I have a buyer looking for this. Yes. Number 3, are you going to fine-tune your negotiation process in escrow to help your clients get credits when things are wrong with the property? Absolutely. If you can offer those 3 things, there's a very high likelihood commission's not going to be a problem. They can be, okay, you can do that. I'm willing to pay you X percentage,
Agreed.
But the problem is agents aren't clear on this.
They're not clear on it because they haven't had to be. Their real value proposition has just been speed.
Or showing properties.
Who can get on the phone the fastest and who can open the door the fastest. That's been the value proposition, right? So what we're doing, and the reason, even though me and Jose don't work with buyers in high volume, the reason we're able to do this is because we know the listing process, and this is the same process. It's no different, right? So what came up for me when I heard you doing that, it's no different than somebody being like, well, why should I hire you to be my listing agent? It's like, well, I appreciate you asking me that. And what I'm aware of is ultimately it's a business decision about who can help you net the most and do it quickly and efficiently. And as such, it usually makes sense to get more than one opinion before you enter into a multi-month contract that could cost you a lot of time and money. Time out. Let's apply this for buyers. Jose, why should I work with you? Well, I appreciate you asking. I know that ultimately this is a business decision about who can help you get your offer accepted, right? Because the average is 50% and ours is 90%. Who can help you to negotiate concessions or credits, right? Our average is between $5,000 to $10,000. And, who can help you get access to off-market deals? Because in this environment, where, we have 41% less inventory than we did last year, the majority of homes you're going to like are going to have multiple offers on them. So if you could get access to properties where you didn't have to compete, I'm imagining that would be helpful or useful, wouldn't it? Yeah. Well, just by you saying that demonstrates that you recognize that it's going to make sense to get more than one opinion prior to entering into a multi-month contract with an agent, just to make sure that you and your family are making the best decision. Does that make sense to you? Like, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. So if we were to connect under normal conditions, are you usually available in the evenings, afternoons? Guys, this is no different. It's the exact same thing.
Well, even I'll tell you this, I know I work with, unlike you, I did work with buyers at the very beginning of my career, and I figured out a process that worked for me. Not only that, but I've trained buyers agents as well, too, for my team. Jaime last year was a number 13th buyers agent in the entire county.
Was he really?
Swear to God.
Love that
tied
guy.
for number 13. He follows the process. The guy's 20, 22, 23 years
How many
old.
deals did he do last year?
20 deals, all buyers, basically.
Love it.
Every single one of them. Bought his first rental property already. Yeah, but he's tied for the number 13th spot in Ventura County for buyer's agents, basically, which is rock solid, you know? So here's what I was going to say, like about the pre-qualifying the listing agent. In the 8 offers that we had yesterday, or no, it was actually 10 offers. I got a text from an agent and he's like, Jose Luis, thank you so much for considering our offer. Like if there's anything we can do to get our offer better, please let us know. Would love an opportunity to work for you. You know what would have been a better approach? Call me. Hey, Jose, my client really wants this property. Hey, are there any offers above our offers? Yes. Is there anything above 800? You know, like, and being like, imagine, this is the way I explained it, bro. Imagine playing poker. There's 2 ways to play poker. One way is you don't know what everybody else has and you kind of have to guess, right? But imagine Aaron playing poker, bro, and knowing everybody else's hand. Would that increase the chances of you winning in poker?
100%.
If you knew what everybody else. So that's the process of pre-qualifying the listing agent. Like, our job as agents is to have relationships with other agents and ask questions basically as to what is it going to take to get my client's offer accepted. And then once you find that out, then your job is to communicate that to your client in a way where it makes sense for them to be competitive in the marketplace. So like, I'll find out that there's a offer that's conventional 20% down at 800. Go back to my client, be like, hey, what do you want to submit at? Well, I want to submit at 780. Well, just to let you know, there's already an offer at 800,000 and that offer has 20% down payment. If we want to be competitive, we like to have to be at the 800 or higher. Would you consider that? No, I would not. I'm going to write a letter to the agent or I'm going to write a letter to the seller and tell them that how much we love their home. And because I write a letter, hopefully they'll go with my offer. And then that's another skill, communicating back to your client and then getting them to submit the right offer. Be like, well, look, Mr. Buyer, let's put ourselves in the seller's shoes. Let's say that you were the seller and you had an offer that was equally as nice as you, and it was $20,000 higher. Like, realistically, do you think you would go with the offer that was $20,000 lower, or do you think that would be going with the offer that's $20,000 higher? Well, I'd probably go with the offer $20,000 higher, you know?
And why is that? And they'll be like,
well,
no, you know what I would say, just to be playful too? I'd be like, well, even if they sent you a letter,
right?
And you'd be like, yeah. It's like, well, why is that? It's like, because it's a lot more money. I said, okay. And don't you think most buyers or most homeowners would feel pretty similar to you? And they're like, well, yeah, I guess so. So it's like, listen, whatever you decide to do, I'll support you 100%. We really have a couple options. The first option is we submit $20,000 lower, knowing that there's a stronger offer on the table, do the letter, and hope and wish and pray that they say okay. And this isn't me being negative. It's just an accurate assessment of reality. With a high degree of probability, we probably won't get it. The second option is we can come in a little bit stronger. I've done the mathematics and the calculations. That extra $20,000 is actually going to add $2 per month to your payment. And then we'll give ourselves a fighting chance to actually get it. So before we make a decision, how about we do this? Tell me specifically, what is it about this property that causes you to believe that it's the one that you can live in for the next 7 to 10 years? Well, this, and that. Okay. And let's say you got this, and that. What would that do for you? Well, I could see my kids in the backyard and the dogs and like all this stuff. And we have pool parties and we can invite people over. Okay. And how would that make you feel? Oh, it'd make me feel fantastic. It'd be wonderful. It's like, okay. And how important is that to you at this stage in your life? It's very important. All right. So then, being that that's the case, we have those 2 options at the on the table. Which one do you think would serve you and your family best? And then
now it's probabilities. Like, think about it. If there's another offer at 800 and you're submitted at 780, what's the probability of you getting your offer accepted? Assuming that they have very similar financing, it's almost 0%. You know, what's the probability of you getting your offer accepted if they're both at 800,000 with very similar finance? 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
If you're at 810 and they're at 800, very similar terms, what's the probability of you getting your offer accepted? It's basically higher. You know, it's like maybe like 90% of the chances you will, assuming that all other things are the same. So it, as you guys can see, there is a process here. Like even for like delivering a 90% offer to acceptance ratio, you're going to pre-qualify the listing agent. Then you're going to communicate back to your client and help your client give your client the information that they need and guidance to be able to make the best decision, which is to make a competitive offer if it's the right home for them. If it's not the right home for them, whatever. If they're okay missing out on that home, whatever. But if that's the right home for them, I promise you, 15 years from now, they're not going to look back and say, man, I wish I hadn't paid that $10,000 for this property.
Not at all. And this is part of actually, I don't think people recognize this. This is actually part of the skill of having a high offer to acceptance ratio.
It's 100% the skill, bro.
Yeah.
I remember I had a guy that was doing a 1031 exchange, and I was covering for my sister Marisol because she was on vacation, and she had already gone 2 of his offers not accepted. And I basically, he found the right property. He goes to see it, and I tell him what other offers are on the table, and he goes, no, I only want to submit at this. And I go, look, can I be fully transparent with you? If you submit at that, your chances of getting your offer accepted are 0%. And then what he says to me is like, well, I'll just wait to see what else comes on the table. And my response to that was like, well, look, let's say that this property sells at 780. You're imagining that the next neighbor that wants to sell their property is going to look at that house that sold at 780 and it's going to say, oh, they sold at 780. I want to sell at 750. Unfortunately, the way that it typically works is they see that their neighbor sold at 780 and now they want 785 or 790 for their property. So you're imagining that by missing out on this property, that we're going to move on to another property and that other property is not going to have as many offers as this property. Now, just so you know, we're in a market where prices are going up. The longer you wait to get your offer accepted, the higher the prices that you're going to submit. I know that you're thinking 780 is high for this property, but because we're in a market where there's less than 1 month supply of inventory, the market's going up like this, meaning if you wait longer, you're not going to be paying 780. You're going to be paying 790, 800, and you might even do it for an inferior home. Now, that has to do with knowing your market stats. In my market, if there's 1 month's worth of inventory, the market's going like this, meaning the longer you wait, the higher the prices. If there's 3 months of inventory, market's flat, you know? But in that situation, I help my client understand what they needed to do. And then he's like, well, I'll just wait like a year because the market's going to crash. And I'm like, look, dude, you're in a 1031 exchange. You're really going to pay 30% in taxes? Like, think about it this way. In order for that idea that you just told me to make sense, the marketplace would have to drop more than 30%. How confident are you that the market's going to drop more than 30% in the next year? Well, I'm not very confident. Well, look, if you do that and you can do it, I'm okay with it. You're going to pay 30% taxes. Like, would you like to do that? Or is it better just to pay an extra $15,000 and get this offer accepted? What would you like to do? Got his offer accepted, happy, moved on. And the market, sure enough, at that time kept going up, up, up for another like 6 months, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, it's solid. So it's 100% the skill. It's like politely confronting. It's no different than when a seller wants to, wait. Overprice their home. It's the same skill. So what I'm aware of is that the skill sets that we learn to list property in high volume are the exact same skill sets that agents
just backwards.
Yeah, just applied to the other side of the business, but it's the exact same skill sets that agents are going to have to learn if they want to do deals with buyers in volume and they want to be compensated appropriately. So, once you go through your value proposition, we went over 3. I mean, you can come up with some others. Then once you've gone over that, now it's about having a conversation. It's like, okay, so now that we've discussed, what I'll be doing for you as your agent, now it's time to have a conversation about compensation. Okay. And the different ways that I can be compensated as your agent, because I want you to be clear on that prior to us entering into an agreement and beginning this process. Would that be okay? And they're like, well, sure. So the first option in terms of compensation is that the listing agent and the seller offer compensation, right? And again, the compensation that we work for in this capacity to do all of this stuff for you is blank, whatever that is. And I think with these changes, you'll see an explosion of different options and choices. Let's say it's like, I'm just saying a number, it's 2.5% or 15,000 bucks, whichever's less. That's just an option, right? And the first way we can get to that is if the listing agent and the seller provide compensation, then great, it's taken care of. The second way we can get to it is that they're offering us a concession, because according to these rule changes, we can still offer concessions in the multiple listing service. And you can use that money towards that compensation figure, or you could use it towards closing costs, which would free up capital that you could use towards the compensation. Now, if there is a gap, Jose, between that number and the concession that they're offering, then you would be responsible for it. Now, the third option is there's an outside chance that the seller and the listing agent offer out nothing. Now, and in a situation where there's multiple offers, I think the leverage is on their side, and that potentially could happen. So if that happens, there's a couple things that could play out. The first is I would politely bow out, because I do not ever want to stand in the way of you getting a home that's your dream home and that you want. Now, you would have to deal with the listing agent, be unrepresented, and have to deal with them yourself directly. And all I would ask in return, Jose, is that you make a commitment to send me at least 2 or 3 referrals. Okay. This terms of goodwill, right? The second option is that if you want your agent, and I would even do this, right? We learned that from Neil Weichel. If you want your agent to fight for you tooth and nail, to look out for your best interest, to deal with the listing agent, to negotiate, do all the things that we discussed, get you those credits and everything, then you would be responsible for the professional fee. So are you clear on the different ways we can get the compensation? Yes. Are you clear on the services that I'm going to be providing you with and the benefits of, perhaps having us be your guide during this process? I am. Do you still wish to proceed? I do. Well, I just need you to authorize this buyer broker's agreement. And then you proceed. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's rock solid, bro. I think that ties it all in together at the very end. And I think it's just understanding that there's a 5-step process, setting an appointment, pre-qualifying, sending a pre-buy package, call to confirm, and then giving a great buyer's consultation. In the buyer's consultation, the way that we do it is we go over their buyer needs, we explain to them what's going on in the marketplace, and then we tell them how we work, which is our value propositions, which is the 3 things, and then we close, basically. And then at that point, now you just got to perform on everything that you have promised on, or do everything you can to deliver what their role is. So I think that if you learn this skill, if you ever choose to become a listing agent, it will make the transition a lot easier, because it'll just be backwards. Sellers,
it'll actually help you to list properties.
100%, because now you have a process. It'll make it really easy transition, because now instead of saying, hey, look, for a seller, I can help you sell your property for top dollar. For a buyer, I can help you find the best deal. Same thing, is just backwards.
Right. Like my list to sales price ratio is blank. My offer to acceptance ratio is blank.
Same deal, just backwards.
Right. Like we have because we have the good fortune of listing lots of property in high volume. We constantly have buyers that are reaching out to us on a regular basis and that are looking for properties. So, that gives us the opportunity to, perhaps create a multiple offer situation where you end up winning in that dynamic. Does that make sense? Well, because we have the good fortune of listing a lot of properties in high volume, that gives us the opportunity to bring you off market deals where you're not having to compete with other agents. Like, I just want everybody to understand, this is legitimately the same thing, and you just need to become a world-class listing agent, but for buyers.
100%. Listing buyers, 100%. It's possible, it's doable, and it'll make the transition to a listing agent a lot easier if you master this process.
Let's go. Let's grow. Listen, I want everybody to drop in the chat a little happy birthday for our Boise's. Jose Morales, 37 today. I've known him since he's 26. He's turning into a fine young man. He is. Let's go. Let's grow. Elite Builders Coast to Coast.
Later, guys. Peace.